I'm Paul Edwards. I'm a self-published horror author, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight I'm watching Dr. Jekyll versus the Werewolf from 1972. Robert Louis Stevenson is rolling in his grave. This is one of 12 werewolf films made by Paul Naschy, who is in some ways the ultimate fanboy. When Paul Naschy was a boy, he saw Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in the theater, and it changed his life, literally. He became obsessed with movie monsters, and he went into the movie industry himself. And he played a lot of different monsters, but his main role was as a werewolf named Waldemar Daninsky. And he made 12 werewolf movies in which he played Waldemar Daninsky. But strangely enough, they were not all in the same continuity. They were basically 12 reboots of the same idea with, the same actor playing the same character, but his origin as a werewolf would be different. The events of one movie would contradict the events in another movie. They were set in different time periods even. And so basically you could see any of these movies in any order and they would make just as much sense, which is something I do with my own book series, by the way. So in Dr. Jekyll versus the Werewolf, we start out meeting Dr. Henry Jekyll in London among his society friends, grandson of the Dr. Jekyll who invented the Mr. Hyde formula all those years ago. Among his society friends are a newlywed couple, and they're about to leave for their honeymoon. And of all the places in the world to go for your honeymoon, they're going to Transylvania, where the groom's family is from. So the next half hour of the movie forgets all about Dr. Jekyll, and it follows this newlywed couple on their Transylvanian honeymoon, which goes exactly the way you would expect a Transylvanian honeymoon to go. Long story short, the new husband is killed. The new bride and now widow makes friends with local werewolf Waldemar Daninsky. And she feels bad for him because of his werewolf affliction. And she has a brilliant idea that she's going to take Waldemar Daninsky back with her to London to be treated by Dr. Jekyll, because Dr. Jekyll, of all people in the world, should understand what it's like to have a dual nature, an ordinary, rational human nature and a wild, monstrous nature. So Waldemar agrees to join her, and they travel together to London. Okay. The rest of the movie now takes place in metropolitan London, completely in contrast to what we've been seeing for the first part of the movie, which was rural villages, spooky cemeteries, exactly what you would expect of a Transylvanian countryside. Now we're in downtown London in the early 1970s, and the streets are crammed. There's double-decker buses lined up, and the werewolf basically has a new hunting ground. They put the new environment for the werewolf to really good use. At one point, for example, Waldemar is supposed to be going up to Dr. Jekyll's office for an appointment, but it's a full moon night, so he has to hurry up and get there. And he gets on an elevator, and a young lady gets on the elevator with him. And as they're traveling up the elevator shaft, the elevator gets stuck. You can imagine how that scene ends as the moon comes up. Another very interesting scene is when the monster, the werewolf, is unleashed on the floor of a discotheque. That's definitely a first for the Waldemar Daninsky movies. Basically, Dr. Jekyll's plan in this film is that he's going to inject Waldemar with the Mr. Hyde formula, And the idea is that the Mr. Hyde aspect of his character will fight against and repress the werewolf aspect of his character. It makes about as much sense to you as it does to me. I don't know why it never occurs to people in these movies that all they're doing is making twice the monster. If you're giving a guy who's already a werewolf the Mr. Hyde formula, wouldn't it cross your mind that just maybe you're going to get a Mr. Hyde-ified werewolf? But if people had, a good sense of long-term consequences in horror movies, they'd all be a lot shorter. So Dr. Jekyll versus the Werewolf, as you can tell from my description, the title is a little bit misleading. In some markets it was released as Dr. Jekyll and the Werewolf, which makes more sense. Because when it's called Dr. Jekyll versus the Werewolf, you sort of assume that Dr. Jekyll is the one who's going to be turning into Mr. Hyde, and that Mr. Hyde is then going to fight a werewolf. No, you don't get that kind of a monster brawl in this picture. What you get is Dr. Jekyll, who is treating Waldemar Daninsky, the guy who's a werewolf, by turning him into Mr. Hyde. Now, I will say, Waldemar Daninsky changing into Mr. Hyde instead of into the werewolf is actually really well done. I really like the Mr. Hyde makeup that Paul Naschy has. And if you're at all familiar with Paul Naschy, you probably know that he played every monster he possibly could during his career, especially in his glory days in the 1970s. And he was certainly no stranger to far-out monster makeup. And his Mr. Hyde is one that I think really blended the look of John Barrymore Mr. Hyde, Spencer Tracy Mr. Hyde, and Frederick March Mr. Hyde. So that's a pretty good combination. So that's Dr. Jekyll versus the Werewolf, or in some markets, Dr. Jekyll and the Werewolf. It is dubbed into English, although it's a Spanish film, which most of the Waldemar Daninsky movies now are dubbed into English. So if you can track it down somewhere online, I hope you enjoy it. And listen, if you're a fan of vintage horror and classic monsters, you would love my books, my book series. The Mourner's Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. I've got 6 novels out so far. Each novel has an entirely different cast of characters. They can be read in any order. One book doesn't depend on your having read another book. I have different monsters in different books, and I sell them as cheaply as Amazon will let me, which means for an ebook it's only 99 cents. They're also available in paperback and in audiobook, and a few of them are available in hardcover. Hey, thanks for letting me talk to you about Dr. Jekyll versus the Werewolf, and I will see you in Mourner's Woods.